Yields back. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I'll turn to you, Ms. Kiefer. What changes would you like to see to ensure that victims are better protected and offenders are held accountable? And you have a microphone button there.
Yeah. Prosecutors need to prosecute.
Oh,
Okay.
there we go.
There.
Yeah.
All right. Prosecutors need to prosecute. You know, people need to be held accountable. Gun laws need to actually be enforced. Instead of taking away guns, why don't we enforce the laws on the books?
So you think that law enforcement, by enforcing laws, you get deterrence, and people are less likely to commit the crime? Interesting concept.
Crazy.
You know, we were just in El Salvador. We saw that. They arrested 70,000 gang members, and now they have the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. It's an interesting thing down there in El Salvador when they chose to start enforcing the law. And Mr. Ingram, I have a question for you. When you were talking about the police come out, they know who it is, they make the arrests, and now the prosecutor reduces the charges. Now, in Arizona, we have something called the Victims' Bill of Rights. And if that's going to happen, typically, there's going to be a consultation with the victim and say, this is why, or, you know, some kind of information. Did you get that from the prosecutor there?
I did not. I did get a letter from an advocate saying this is happening. We responded and said we're not in agreement. And then we would get a letter in the mail a month or two later that's saying here's what happened. And
so Mr. Ingram, in Arizona, we also would say we're going to have this individual's pled. You're the victim. If you wish to make a statement or submit something to the court, and you could come in for the sentencing is going to be XYZ date. None of that happened for you.
That's never happened to me.
Did that happen for you, Ms. Kiefer, in your case?
To testify against?
Yeah, you testified. You actually testified. Okay. Mr. Schultz, what changes to your business? Do you have a business in?
I do not, no,
Okay.
no.
So what's the crime rates doing to the business community in Minnesota? Particularly
So
Minneapolis, St. Paul.
there's a lot of ways to cut that, but from a statistical perspective, Minnesota is at its slowest growing period in its history. We're growing incredibly slowly. We're losing people. We're losing businesses to other states. One of the causes of that is clearly the violent crime.
It's an amazing thing to me, and I don't know why we got the music going. That's wild. But here, I'm going to submit for the record an article called 4 Reasons We Should Worry About Missing Crime Data Without Objection. So here we go. 2022 crime data. How many reported, and Mr. Nels talked about it, but I want to put an article about this. Agencies that participated and actually reported it, 8,358. That was 44% of agencies. How many participated partially? And like he said, it's so complex. Some participated for part of it, not all of it. Another 4,400, or about 24%. But how many agencies didn't participate at all, including some of the nation's largest cities? 6,097, 32% of all. They didn't even participate. So when you give us statistical data based on, as my colleague was mentioning, the FBI statistics, they don't even get all the statistics. So I know, and I respect Mr. Ingram, who says, well, you know, we need to take the people part of it too. But as policymakers, we also look at the data. And the data is woefully inaccurate because it's woefully incomplete. That's the reality of it. And then, how much data is analyzed to say, this number, like in your case, how many cases were dropped down and busted down? I was a prosecutor and a defense attorney. I'll tell you that 95% of cases plead out. 95% of cases are busted down from the original charge. And so we don't know what's being charged and how they're breaking them down. A cop is shot in the United States every 22 hours this year. Every 22 hours, police officers shot. And I submit that for the record without objection. I submit a document called the Blue City Murder Problem, which gets at the point I was trying to make. What's Arizona's homicide rate when you take Phoenix out of it. Not just all Maricopa County, which has 6 million people in it. When you take out Phoenix, the rest of Maricopa County is pretty darn safe. That's the reality. And that's the blue state problem that, again, that Mr. Nels brought up. And then I'm going to submit also for the record in my last act here this morning, I'm looking for the title of it. Here we go. Violent crime creating dystopian hell despite Biden's claim America is safer. Without objection, that'll come in. We have no more members to ask questions, and all of you have participated, and we appreciate all of your testimony today. Thank you for being here, and with that, we are adjourned.